the morning's newspapers. Joining us are Martin Hardy, the Northern sports correspondent for The Times and Sunday Times, and Nick Miller, football writer for The Athletic. Welcome to you both. Let's run you through the back pages that we do have. Although plenty of the papers still reaching us as they waited for the final whistle at the Emirates. Guardian, though, quick out the blocks this evening as they splash on the image of match winner Kai Havertz, finishing off his former club Chelsea. They also cover Pep Guardiola, who's been weighing in on politics, and England men's latest T20 win ahead of the World Cup. The Daily Star has more on Pep Guardiola, supposedly aiming a jibe at Arteta over the lack of trophies that have followed his club's spending. And on the sidebar here, they cover the anguish felt by Dwight McNeil and his partner after that failed move on deadline day from Everton to Crystal Palace. Havertz and Arsenal lead the way on skysports.com, as well as Mikel Arteta gets a chance to land the first trophy of the domestic season, and his first in 6 years since that sole FA Cup triumph back in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. Nick, Martin, great to chat. It was a slow start to this one, wasn't it, in this semi-final second leg, but it's Arsenal that march on to Wembley. A significant milestone, would you say, Martin, considering they haven't been in a major competition final for 5.5, 6 years now?
Yeah, I think if you saw the relief when Kai Havertz scored in the 97th minute, you saw the subs coming on the pitch, the players rushing to celebrate with Kai Havertz. The stadium had gone quiet for periods. I think Chelsea tactically played pretty well, but couldn't quite finish the plan that Limrasini has set for them. Arsenal are a team that have conceded, I think, 8 goals in 12 Premier League games at home. So it's a very difficult team to break down. The first leg, I thought the gulf between the two teams was much greater. Garnacho's goals perhaps flattered Chelsea a little bit. Tonight, there was some nerves. Arsenal didn't create a great deal. The counter-argument is they didn't have to. But, if anything, if Chelsea had created anything and sneaked that goal, we were heading to extra time. And I think that would have been a very nervy stadium. It is a long time, the fact that it's 2020 since Arsenal and Mikel Arteta have won something. We're now in 2026. Other clubs have had far greater success, and we probably will go on to the piece about Pep talking about how much Arsenal have spent searching for this bit of silverware. It is nice to see, we saw it with Newcastle last season, just how important the League Cup is now amongst top teams. Even if they play weaker teams earlier on in the competition, they are desperate to win it. Arteta is desperate to get that bit of silverware. His team, the scoreline isn't perhaps a fair one because it's a 97th minute goal. We had 6 minutes of injury time. Chelsea had pretty much thrown everything but by the kitchen sink finally to try and get that goal. It was very, very tight, but relief swept around that stadium. And for Arsenal, it's a huge moment. They were, 4-0 over the 2 legs last season at this stage in the competition against Newcastle. This time they've done it. They've won both legs, and you saw from those celebrations that's just what it means to them, and how desperate they are to get a bit of silverware in a season that thus far is in very good shape.
Yeah, we just saw the back page of The Sun there, Nick. Avit was the headline. Kai has final word for Gunners. Fitting almost, wasn't it, that it's a former Chelsea player that gets Arsenal or confirms Arsenal's win into the final. What did you make of his performance and the fact that he used to play for Chelsea?
Yeah, well, obviously Arsenal are sort of easing him back in after such a long time out injured, and I suppose he could be one of the most crucial players in this kind of second half of the season. As Martin says, that it's going very well for them so far, but it almost doesn't mean anything tangible yet. But winning the Carabao Cup would almost sort of convince them that they are actually a good team, because there's been this kind of strange nervousness around them, even though they're top of the Premier League, finished top of the Champions League, now through to the Carabao Cup final. And as Martin mentioned earlier, you could sense that kind of nervousness as the game went on. But it might almost be of a sort of benefit to Arsenal that Havertz has been injured for the first half of the season. He's such a versatile player for them. He can play in midfield, he can play up front, and he could be absolutely crucial for them for the second half. And the fact that he hasn't had those miles in his legs for the first half might be crucial for them as well.
And Martin, you touched on it in your first answer there about the importance of winning a trophy. Just expand on that a little bit, because Mikel Arteta has only got this FA Cup win under his belt in terms of trophies since his time at Arsenal. We saw the back page of the Star where Pep Guardiola's calling out to Arteta saying, show me the trophies. You know, how important is it that they get a return on their investment, Arsenal?
Yeah, Pep and Mikel, who work together, are supposed to be good friends as well. So we'll see how that friendship kicks on from here. What you would say is that whenever you've read anything about Arteta when he was with Pep, or how diligent he is in his work at Arsenal, I think you are seeing almost a borderline fanatic to break that trophy drought. 2 or 3 years ago, the argument would probably be this Arsenal team were much more, for the purists, much more pleasant on the eye. But they couldn't get past the likes of Manchester City and Liverpool, who were so dominant at the time. There is a certain irony now that those two teams are weak and Arsenal have changed the way they play. But I think that single-minded determination from Arteta to become champions means he has explored every avenue possible to make this team even more difficult to beat. So that could mean it's a throw-in. It means it's free kicks. You may touch upon what Liam Rosenior did tonight for Chelsea, which was interesting in terms of taking 3 of his players out of the Chelsea penalty area for an Arsenal corner, and Arsenal suddenly had to change their tactics. So it was nice to see somebody react to that situation. But in the main, it's been very successful, and Gabriel scored a lot of goals. It's, as I said, it's not necessarily for the purists, but it speaks of his desire to get rid of this monkey off his back in terms of not winning trophies, spending money. I think anybody, even if you're against Arsenal, would see they're getting more and more the look of a team that could be champions of England. And at the heart of that is him. You know, sometimes I think people get annoyed by just how close to the pitch he is at the side and how he's kicking every ball. And sometimes he's not far off making a tackle, I think, on a winger. But I think that speaks volumes of just how much this means to him and how much he has to get this team this season to win silverware. They've done brilliant in the Premier League so far, brilliant in the Champions League. They're pushing that on a lot of competitions. Kai Havertz and Gabriel Jesus returning means they may have the squad depth to try and keep pushing on all these fronts. But at the heart of this is a real pressure on Arteta to prove that he can become a serial winner with Arsenal as a manager.
Yeah, and at the very least, after losing 4 straight major competition semi-finals, Arsenal are through to a Wembley final. But let's just have a word on Chelsea, Nick, because it was some interesting tactics there that they employed this evening, as Martin's alluded to, how they dealt with set pieces against Arsenal, but also the decision from Liam Rosenior to seemingly play a back 3 with wing backs, it seemed, and I think that's the first time that's happened under Rosenior. What did he make of his tactical changes tonight, Nick?
Yeah, it was interesting. It'd be interesting to see if he explains afterwards how much that was kind of a result of circumstances, because they had a few injuries, a few players not quite ready, most notably in kind of wide attacking areas. So it may have been a more kind of practical choice to sort of pick a team that didn't really need wingers. But I could see the logic in going for that. If it was a kind of active tactical choice, you could see the logic in keeping things tight initially, and then the plan being to kind of bring some more attackers on. He obviously had Cole Palmer and Willian Estevao on the bench, so he could bring those guys on. The theory was fine. It's just the execution wasn't quite there towards the end, and it was a slightly strange ending to the game. It just felt like Chelsea were almost being too patient towards the end. You don't necessarily want to be they should just get in the mix and throw it up there, but a little bit of that might not have hurt at the end when they were, in the injury time, they were just kind of passing it around to each other. So I don't know whether Liam Rosenior would be frustrated with that, but yeah, it was an interesting way of trying to combat Arsenal, and yeah, that particularly the tactic of bringing more men out of the penalty box for those corners, maybe kind of lessening Arsenal's advantage with all the players that they pile into the middle. So yeah, it ultimately it didn't work, but I think it was an interesting approach, and it's possibly one that other managers will repeat and see if they can have better luck with against Arsenal in the future.
Yeah, it's been, all in all, Martin, a really impressive start to head coach life for Liam Rosenior. 8 games, 6 wins, but those 2 defeats have both come against Arsenal. And it's matchups like this, isn't it, against the best teams that will help him prove that he is the man for the job.
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation because he's trying to impact his thoughts on a team coming in mid-season when Chelsea were kind of up and down. As I said, I think they did better in this game than they did in the first game against Chelsea, and it was his tactical switch against West Ham. I think, as Jamie Carragher showed on this channel, there was major changes at against West Ham when they were losing the game 2-0 and they go win the game 3-2. He's proven himself progressive, thoughtful, all the things I think, which was why he was given the job to try and blend these players together. In that final stages of the game, I saw this when Fulham were trying to come back against Manchester United. Even the 99th minute now, teams are so formulaic in terms of they had to recycle the ball and move it around. And as Nick said, although Chelsea did put their 2 centre-halves up at the back, you thought this is the time to try and just launch it and try and get a bounce here or there. And we were probably looking at the best chances, a shot from Fernandes and a flick from Fofana. So there wasn't a great deal created, but there were some excellent individual performances in there from João Pedro, had a really, really good game. Caicedo was always very strong. You were relying a lot on Cole Palmer, who's not fit, to come into that game, and Garnacho to have the same impact that he had last week. But tactically, I think it threw Arsenal for the first 45 minutes. They weren't expecting that. That's quite clever from Liam Rosenior. As I said, as you said there, what we taught in 8 games, it's still incredibly early. Ironically, right at the finish there, I think he wanted his team to launch a throw-in a la Arsenal, but his team didn't. They moved the ball around again. So they are learning from him, and he's learning about what they can do. I don't think they could have done that much more tonight against an Arsenal team that was obsessed with not conceding a goal tonight. And for that, they get the success, and for that, they reach a final for the first time in quite a while.
Yeah, seeing the back page of the Telegraph there. Sarah. And everyone will focus on Kai Havertz, of course, but it was a great team performance from Arsenal that means they are through to their first major cup final in 6 years. OK, we're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll be looking at more of the sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Mirror, as we take a deeper dive into Pep Guardiola's latest political comments and comments about other clubs saying they need to deliver trophies after spending so much. Stay with us.